She told him it was poison to his species. She told him that if the liquid touched his lips, the man known as Major Miles Henry would cease to exist. But looking at his shattered leg and the burning skyline of what used to be his home, Miles didn't see a choice. He saw a weapon. He didn't just drink it to survive. He drank it to hunt them down. And when he woke up, he wasn't human anymore. But he wasn't alien either. He was the only thing the galaxy had left to fear. You are not going to want to miss a second of this. We are diving into a story of sacrifice, biological horror, and the ultimate revenge. Before we descend into the bunker, make sure you hit that like button. It really helps the channel survive the algorithm, and subscribe if you love high-quality sci-fi storytelling. Now let's witness the transformation. The sky over the ruins of Seattle wasn't blue anymore. It was a bruised, sickly purple, choked by the terraforming smog pumping out of the Vorg dropships. Major Miles Henry dragged his left boot through the ash, the sound like sandpaper on bone. Every step was a negotiation with agony. His leg was a mess of torn uniform and hastily applied field dressings that had soaked through hours ago. Sepsis wasn't just knocking at the door, it had kicked it in and was setting up shop in his bloodstream. Miles was the last of the 4th Ranger Battalion. 3 months ago the Vorg had arrived. They didn't communicate. They didn't negotiate. They were insectoid nightmares encased in bioorganic obsidian armor, and they treated Earth like a resource pit and humanity like an infestation. They had wiped out the major cities in the first 48 hours. Now they were just mopping up. Miles's vision swam. He wasn't walking toward safety, there was no safety left. He was walking toward the Echo Point research station, buried deep in the Cascade foothills. It was a black site facility, a rumor he'd heard about in the officers' mess back when there was still an officers' mess. If there was a radio left in the Pacific Northwest capable of reaching the Resistance Command in the Rockies, it was there. He stumbled, his shoulders slamming into the rusted hull of a destroyed tank. He coughed, spitting up blood that looked too dark. "Just one more mile, Henry," he muttered, the sound of his own voice alien in the silence of the dead forest. "Don't die in the dirt." When he finally breached the blast doors of Echo Point, he expected dust. He expected corpses. He didn't expect the lights to be on. The facility hummed with a low, throbbing power. Miles limped into the central atrium, his rifle raising with a shaky hand. Shadows stretched long across the floor. "Identify," he croaked, swinging his weapon toward a movement in the dark. A figure stepped into the light. It wasn't human. She stood 7 feet tall, her limbs elongated and elegant, encased in armor that looked like spun glass. Her skin was the color of storm clouds, and her eyes were large, luminous pools of bioluminescent teal. She held her hands up, empty. "Put the kinetic thrower down, human," she said. Her voice didn't just hit his ears, it resonated in his chest. "You're dying. Violence is a waste of your remaining minutes." Miles collapsed, his legs finally giving out. The alien caught him before he hit the floor, her strength surprising for someone so slender. She laid him on a medical plinth. "I am Nova," she said, her teal eyes scanning his wounds with a clinical detachment. "I am the last Archivist of the Aethelgard. And you are broken." "The Vorg." Miles gasped, gripping her armored wrist. "Are they close?" "The Vorg are everywhere," Nova replied softly. "They consumed my world before they came for yours. They are the locusts of the stars. And you, Major Henry, have about 20 minutes before your organs shut down." She moved to a containment unit on the wall. It hissed open, releasing a fog of cryovapors. Inside sat a single, ornate vial. The liquid inside wasn't water. It was a swirling nebula of gold and violet, moving with a life of its own. "My people," Nova said, sadness coloring her tone, "were not warriors. We were scholars. But we learned to survive. We distilled our consciousness, our memories, our genetic adaptability into this. The Primordial Echo." She turned to him, holding the vial. "It was meant to preserve our history. But in a host, it is a rewrite." Miles looked at the swirling liquid. "A cure?" "No," Nova said sharply. "Evolution. Accelerated, violent, and irreversible." Nova stepped closer, the light of the vial casting strange shadows on Miles's sweat-drenched face. The pain in his leg was a dull roar now, fading into the cold numbness of approaching death. "If you drink this," Nova warned, her voice dropping to a whisper, "Major Miles Henry dies. His memories will remain, his personality may survive, but biologically? You will never be human again. You will be a hybrid. A vessel for the Aethelgard collective." Miles laughed, a wet, hacking sound. "Humanity? Hasn't done me much good lately, Nova. We're losing. We're fighting starships with rifles. He reached out, his hand trembling. If I drink it, can I kill them? Nova paused. You will possess the strength of 1,000 dead scholars who learned how to hate. Yes. You will be able to kill them. Bottoms up, Miles whispered. He took the vial, uncorked it with his teeth and downed it in one swallow. It didn't taste like medicine. It tasted like ozone and battery acid. For a second nothing happened. Then Miles screamed. It wasn't pain. Pain was a signal from nerves to the brain. This was the rewiring of the nerves themselves. Miles felt his DNA unspooling. He felt the fire race through his veins, boiling the sepsis away, knitting bone back together, tearing muscle fibers apart and rebuilding them with carbon-dense alien biology. He fell off the table, writhing on the floor. Do not fear, a voice spoke in his mind. Not Nova's voice. 1,000 voices. We are the Aethelgard. We are with you. His vision went white, then fractured into a kaleidoscope of data. He could see the electromagnetic spectrum. He could hear the heartbeat of a mouse in the walls. He could feel the rotation of the earth. Memories that weren't his flooded in. He saw a violet sun setting over crystal spires. He saw the Vorg ships darkening the sky of a world he'd never visited. He felt the sorrow of 1 billion souls extinguishing. Then the screaming stopped. Silence filled the room. Miles stood up. He looked at his hands. They looked human, but the veins beneath the skin shimmered with a faint violet light. He rolled up his pant leg. The shattered tibia, the rotting flesh, gone. The skin was smooth, pale, and harder than steel. He took a breath, and the air tasted rich with information. He could smell the ozone of the facility's reactor. He could smell Nova's fear. You survived, Nova whispered, stepping back. I was statistically uncertain. I'm still here, Miles said. His voice was deeper now, layered with a subharmonic frequency that made the glass on the medical cabinets vibrate. And I'm not alone. He looked at the blast doors. They found us, he stated. He didn't ask. He knew. He could hear the Vorg skulkers, 3 of them, moving through the ventilation shafts 200 meters out. The Vorg? Nova asked. 3 drones, Miles said, his eyes flashing with a predatory purple light. Let's see what this upgrade can do. Miles moved toward the atrium, but he didn't walk. He flowed. The gravity of Earth felt like a suggestion rather than a law. There are other survivors, Nova said, rushing to keep up with his long strides. In the subbasement. Dr. Eris and his team. They've been hiding for weeks. I know, Miles said. I can hear their heartbeats. They're terrified. The blast doors of the atrium buckled. Sparks showered down as a plasma cutter sliced through the heavy tritanium. With a screech of tearing metal, the doors were kicked inward. 3 Vorg skulkers skittered in. They were horrific, 8-legged biological tanks, chittering in a language of clicks and hisses. They carried heavy plasma cannons mounted on their dorsal carapaces. Before the transformation, Miles would have sought cover. He would have checked his ammo. He would have prayed. Now he just analyzed. Target 1, shield modulation frequency 44.5 Hz. Target 2, damaged servo in left rear leg. Target 3, command unit. The first skulker raised its cannon. Miles moved. To Nova he was a blur. To Miles the world was moving in slow motion. He closed the distance in a heartbeat. He didn't use a gun. He slammed his fist into the first drone's head. The impact sounded like a thunderclap. The Vorg's exoskeletal armor shattered. Miles ripped the plasma cannon from its mount with his bare hands and spun around. Eat this, he growled. He fired the alien weapon, vaporizing the second drone instantly. The Aethelgard memories in his head guided his aim, calculating the trajectory with mathematical perfection. The third drone, the command unit, shrieked. A sonic attack meant to liquefy human brains. Miles just grinned. The Aethelgard collective in his mind dampened the frequency. He walked through the sonic wave, grabbed the drone by its mandibles, and looked into its multifaceted eyes. Tell the Hive, Miles whispered, that Earth isn't just a resource anymore. It's a graveyard. He crushed the creature's skull. Silence returned to the atrium, broken only by the sizzling of Vorg blood on the concrete. Dr. Eris and a ragged group of 5 survivors emerged from the subbasement, eyes wide with terror and awe. They looked at the carnage. Then they looked at Miles. Major? Eris asked, his voice trembling. Is that you? Miles wiped purple ichor from his hands. Mostly, document mostly. The group didn't stay at Echo Point. Miles knew, because the Aethelgard memories knew how the Vorg operated, that when a patrol went silent, a bombardment followed. Their destination was Fortitude, the code name for the resistance stronghold in the Rockies. It was a 3-day trek through hostile territory. The journey changed the way the survivors looked at Miles. He didn't sleep. He didn't eat. He walked point, his eyes constantly scanning the horizon. When they rested, he stood sentinel, staring at the stars. Nova walked beside him. "The voices," she asked quietly on the second night. "Are they loud?" "It's like being in a crowded room," Miles admitted. "But they're not screaming. They're teaching. They're showing me how to modify the energy cells in our rifles. How to shield our heat signatures." On the third day they hit the ambush. They were crossing a dried-out riverbed when the ground shook. A Vorg behemoth, a siege unit the size of a house, erupted from the camouflage of the tree line. It was flanked by a platoon of infantry. The survivors screamed, scrambling for cover behind rocks. "We can't fight that," Dr. Eris yelled. "It's got kinetic shielding." Miles looked at the behemoth. The Aethelgard collective overlaid a schematic on his vision. Weakness detected. Thermal exhaust port, ventral plating. Shield cycle, 3 seconds. "Nova, get them to the ridge," Miles ordered. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to ring the bell." Miles grabbed a discarded piece of Vorg tech, a volatile fuel cell from the drones he'd killed earlier. He sprinted directly at the behemoth. The siege unit fired its main cannon. Miles slid under the beam, the heat singing his hair. He leaped, clearing 20 feet of air, and landed on the behemoth's back. He ripped the plating off with his enhanced strength and jammed the fuel cell into the exhaust port. "Delivery for the Queen," he shouted, diving off the side. The explosion was blinding. The behemoth crumpled, its internal reactor going critical. The shockwave knocked the Vorg infantry off their feet. Miles landed in a crouch, drawing his combat knife. It was just a piece of steel, but in his hands, it moved with the precision of a surgeon. He dismantled the remaining infantry in a whirlwind of violence. By the time the smoke cleared, the survivors were staring at him not as a savior, but as a god of war. But Miles felt a chill. Among the wreckage of the Vorg unit, he found a transmission device. It was broadcasting a signal. He picked it up, and his enhanced hearing translated the clicks. "Subject located. The hybrid. Deploy the prototype." "We have to move," Miles said, his face grim. "They're sending a specialist." They made it to the outskirts of Fortitude by dusk. But the gates were blocked. Standing in the middle of the road was a man. He wore the tattered remnants of a U.S. general's uniform. His skin was gray, his veins pulsing with a sickly green light, a corrupted version of Miles's violet glow. This was Commander Deckard, a hero of the early war thought dead. "Henry," Deckard smiled, and his teeth were filed into points. "The Hive told me you accepted the gift." Miles halted the group. "Deckard? What did they do to you?" "Do to me?" Deckard laughed. "They opened my eyes. The Vorg aren't just conquerors, Miles. They are the final shape of life. They injected me with the essence, but I didn't fight it like you. I let it in. I let the Vorg rewrite the Aethelgard code." Nova stepped forward, her bioluminescence flaring red in anger. "He is an abomination. A corrupted vessel. I am the future." Deckard roared. He drew a sword made of pure energy, Vorg tech fused with human design. "Go," Miles told Nova. "Get them inside." The fight between Miles and Deckard was a blur of motion faster than the human eye could track. Deckard was stronger. The Vorg modifications gave him brute force. He hammered Miles with blows that cracked the pavement. Miles was defensive, using the Aethelgard's fluidity to dodge. "Why fight for them?" Deckard screamed, clashing blades with Miles. "They are weak. We are gods." "We were soldiers first," Miles grunted, catching Deckard's wrist. "And soldiers protect the weak." Deckard threw Miles through a brick wall. Miles stood up, shaking off the debris. "He is overconfident," the Aethelgard voices whispered. "He relies on the Vorg aggression protocols. Use the human element. Improvise." Deckard lunged for a killing blow. Miles didn't dodge. He stepped into the strike, taking the blade through his shoulder. It sizzled, burning flesh, but Miles pinned Deckard's arm. "Gotcha," Miles snarled. With his free hand he didn't punch. He pulled the pin on a human fragmentation grenade he'd kept on his belt and jammed it into the gap in Deckard's armor. Miles kicked him away. "No!" Deckard screamed. The explosion tore Deckard apart. Miles lay on the ground, his shoulders smoking. The Aethelgard healing factor was already working, knitting the wound shut, but it was slow. Deckard wasn't dead immediately. His upper torso dragged itself forward. "You think you won?" Deckard wheezed, coughing up green fluid. Look up. Miles looked up. The clouds parted. Descending from the orbit, blotting out the stars, was a ship unlike the others. It was the size of a city. The Harbinger. The World Eater. It's here to sterilize, Deckard laughed with his dying breath. The hive does not tolerate failure. The massive ship began to charge its primary weapon. A red glow illuminated the entire mountain range. Nova ran to Miles's side. That weapon, it will crack the planetary crust. Fortitude, the resistance, everything, it will be dust in 3 minutes. We have no weapons that can touch that, Dr. Eris cried, looking at the sky in despair. Miles stood up. He felt the Aethelgard voices swelling in his mind, a chorus of panic and rage. They remembered this ship. It was the one that destroyed their world. We don't need a gun, Miles said, his voice taking on a dual resonance, human and alien perfectly synced. Miles? Nova asked. The essence, Miles said. It's psionic, right? It's a network. Yes, but that ship is biological. It runs on a hive mind. If I can tap into it, you'll burn out your brain, Nova warned. You will lose yourself. Better me than the planet, Miles said. Miles closed his eyes. He didn't reach for a weapon. He reached for the mind. He pushed his consciousness out, riding the Aethelgard frequency. He left his body. He felt the cold vacuum of space. He slammed into the mental barriers of the Harbinger. It was like hitting a wall of screaming metal. The Vorg hive mind was a storm of hunger and command. Intruder. Purge. Miles felt his identity fracturing. The sheer weight of the alien mind tried to crush him. He forgot his name. He forgot the pain in his leg. And oh, the Aethelgard voices roared. We remember. Inside the digital psychic realm, Miles wasn't just one man. He was an army. He saw the control nodes of the ship. He didn't try to hack them. He infected them. He injected the concept of fear into a hive mind that had never felt it. He projected the image of the human spirit, the irrational, stubborn refusal to die. He forced the ship's systems to perceive its own engines as threats. Overload. Overload. On the ground, Nova and the survivors watched in awe. The red glow of the Harbinger's weapon flickered. Then it turned white. Explosions rippled across the hull of the megaship. It wasn't being hit from the outside, it was tearing itself apart from the inside. With a soundless flash in the upper atmosphere, the Harbinger aborted its firing sequence. Its engines flared, and it turned, limping away into the dark of space, retreating from the psychic scream of one human man. Miles collapsed. His heart stopped. Darkness. Then a voice. Major? Miles gasped, air rushing into his lungs. He was back in his body. He was lying in the dirt outside the gates of Fortitude. Nova was holding his head. The survivors were kneeling around him. Did we get him? Miles whispered. You drove them away, Nova said, a tear of pure light running down her cheek. You broke the hive's confidence. They have never known defeat like this. Miles sat up. He felt different. The voices in his head were quieter now, respectful. He wasn't just a host anymore. He was their leader. The gates of Fortitude opened. Colonel Hayes and the Resistance Command walked out, weapons lowered, staring at the man who had stared down a starship. Later that night, Miles stood on the ramparts looking at the moon. They'll be back, Nova said, joining him. I know, Miles replied. He looked at his hand, glowing softly in the dark. You are not human anymore, Miles, she said. Does that grieve you? Miles looked at the sleeping camp below. Families, soldiers, children, alive because he drank the poison. I'm not human, Miles agreed. And I'm not Aethelgard. I'm the bridge. I'm the thing standing between the monsters and the innocent. He looked at Nova and smiled, a human smile. Let them come back. We'll be waiting. And that is the legend of Major Miles Henry, the first hybrid. But the war against the Vorg is far from over. If you want to know what happens next or hear more stories about humanity defying the odds, destroy that like button and make sure you are subscribed. Check out the playlist on your screen right now for more sci-fi insanity. What would you have done? Would you drink the vial? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, keep watching the stars.